This is my current Apistogramma aquarium. Now I know what you're thinking, that's not an aquarium. It's a dark box with a little gap at the side. And you're absolutely right, this aquarium got the better of me. I stopped the maintenance on it a while ago because I'd planned to, rebuild it as I'm doing now, but that went on for a little bit longer than expected, as most things tend to. The thing is with this one, it's got a lot of moss in it, and the moss grows way quicker than you actually think. When you've got one tank, moss seems to grow slowly, but when you've got as many as I have, you turn around and the whole tank's full. That said, we have got a really nice pair of Apistogramma Hongshloi in here, and they've been breeding heavily. There's actually a lot of babies in this tank. I've no idea how many at the moment, but I've seen them every now and again coming out of the darkness. Now, as you can see here, I've emptied the tank and drained it down, and oh my goodness, I was so surprised. There are way more babies in here than I first thought. I'm overjoyed with this. Now I'm going to separate them from the parents and the rest of the inhabitants of the tank, and for the future inhabitants we're going to put in as well. I want to bring them up on their own in their own little tank. So for now we'll take all the big fish out and separate them, and then I'm going to concentrate on catching these little ones, which is really hard because they keep darting in and out of the mulm on the bottom. They actually hide in it, which is quite interesting, and it explains why they're able to survive in this tank, I think, without being predated on. They dart straight in there, but eventually I managed to catch them all, and we've got about 10 I think in total, something like that. They're too quick and small to count all of them. And this is the mulm that I was talking about. Now this was difficult because every time I tried to catch a fish, it stirred it up, and I had to wait for it to settle again before I could see them. Took a while, but we got there in the end. I placed a few plants in a bucket with some of the water from the tank. I then put the bigger fish in here. They'll be absolutely fine whilst we're doing the build. But then in my other studio, I've got a small cube aquarium that's very well established. It's also got mulm at the bottom, and I think it'd be a really good place for the baby Apistogramma to grow up. So now for the filter. I'm not sure I'm going to use this one at the moment. It's just a simple little cheap hang on the back, but I do want the sponge out of it. I can place that sponge in whatever filter I do decide, and then it'll be like instantly cycled straight away because there's enough bacteria on that filter to compensate for the amount of fish in the tank. And I'll leave it in the bucket with the fish whilst we're doing the build. This will ensure that all the bacteria stays alive. So that is the tank all clean. Now I want to swap out this light. It's a good light, don't get me wrong, but we've got one the same as my plant storage tank underneath. Looks a little bit nicer. It's also a lower Kelvin, so it's slightly more of a yellowy tone to it, if you can tell the difference. And I think that will lend itself better to the kind of sort of aquarium we're going to create, like a realistic style. I want it to look more like natural sunlight. So we got the tank for a good price actually. It's part of a kit. It looks really good, it doesn't break the bank at all, and it's good quality stuff. It's basically the Superfish 90 kit, but without the filter, because the one that comes with that I don't really like very much, and I'm choosing to use my own. Now our first job is to lay down the media that's going to create some height at the back of the tank. It'll also hide that area that I didn't paint lazily last time I set this up. Oh, by the way, that's just normal white paint you're seeing there that you'd paint your ceiling or walls with. It just takes a few coats at the back of the tank and it looks alright, doesn't it? So we're placing the gravel, sand and aqua soil mix that we've recycled from this tank into these Ziploc bags. They're fully made of plastic so they don't rust or anything like that, and they're perfect for keeping everything locked down underneath the decorative sand layer on top. And then on top of that, I'm going to do the same again, but with just aqua soil. Now, lots of people have been asking me, can the roots of the plants get into these bags? And the answer is absolutely yes, the roots really do. I've had to rip them out of them before when I've redone tanks. I'm using some smaller bags down at the lower end of the tank, just so we haven't got as much height there, because we want to give it that sort of triangular shape. On top of this, I'm placing just a sand. It's basically like pool filter sand, and upon doing my research, it's similar to the sort of colour sands you're going to see in South America. We want to give it a good inch to an inch and a half, just to ensure that we've got enough there to plant into later on. And then it's time to start placing in our hardscape. Now this time I'm going for something a little bit different. Usually I'll place this big piece right at the back, but I'm bringing it to the foreground. This is just to create a little bit more sense of depth, and I can get the composition drifting to the back of the tank. I'm hoping this will create some cool, interesting little caves and things like that, and a little bit more realism to the tank. Okay, so I've added in a couple of pieces off camera, this one here and this one here. What I'm trying to do here is create a triangular composition, but not like usual. Usual, it would come from the back corner and come to the front. This time I'm trying to bring it from the front going to the back. So we've got this big piece right in the foreground, and I'm hoping that will create a lot more realism rather than sort of like an aquascape, if you know what I mean. So I don't want it looking like it's a specific shape. I want it to look kind of random, as if something's fallen into a corner of a river somewhere. I mean, stuff will sort of follow a line, because in any sort of river there's a flow and stuff naturally gets, like, you know, pushed horizontally in that way. But I'm thinking actually this piece should be flipped, to be honest, or just not so perfectly going that way with the top branch. Yeah, I'll give it a go and see how it looks. It's all about just experimenting, see, and come up with what you think is working best. Just keep fiddling around. I mean, I might change this completely in a minute. Hope not. There we go. I think I've nailed it. So off camera, I flipped around that piece that was like pointing upwards, so it follows out the sort of root structure, and then I put the piece that was there up here and added this other piece, and it just, I don't know, it just has an explosive look about it. It's taken up a good portion of the height of the aquarium as well with the top pieces, so you get an interest everywhere, but there's so much room for planting. Back area as well here. Look, I'm going to be bringing this up to a higher level, so it's got like a sort of step down. And then that way, any plants we plant at the back there will already be looking great. I'm thinking like a big sword at the back there would look so good, and then maybe the smaller plants in the foreground, and then some stems all on this side, and just have that really awesome sort of look to it, as if it's a corner of a river somewhere. So we need loads of detail though. I want it to look messy, if you like. This is not an aquascape, so I've deliberately left all these sort of nooks and crannies everywhere for the pistos to keep breeding in, because we want to get even more babies. So up next we've got more Hardscape, and this is going to be river pebbles. Well, it's a river, isn't it? It's a river. It's not a river, it's a tank, but we're trying to simulate the look of a river, aren't we? So rounded pebbles work really well in this situation. Don't be too strict in where you place them. I'm just sticking them in some gaps somewhere as if they've fallen down on their journey along the river. And as I said, I'm raising the height of that back area so we've got more room to plant into. I want to have some swords in this part, Amazon swords that is, not actual swords. So they got big root systems, so they need more to plant into. And now that I'm happy with the Hardscape, I'm going to glue it all together using some cyanoacrylate super glue gel. It's all fish and plant safe and goes basically into a plastic when it touches water. Next up, I'm adding a slightly larger grading of sand. It just gives it a little bit more texture. It's not vastly different and not essential really either. As always, I'm sprinkling it kind of randomly, but most of it's going near the big pebbles. And then I've got some completely different detail stones. Tiny little pebbles, they're kind of random coloured, but there are a couple of greys in there as well, which will go nicely with the river pebbles. So I'm really happy with how the Hardscape's turning out. I just feel like we need something in this corner here. So I've got one more piece of wood. I want to see if it sort of adds to it or takes away from it, because I want to continue that line. So you can see, look, it's all shrinking as it gets further into the distance. I think one more piece would really help that sort of perspective trick. Yeah, that'll work nicely, but you see how it's parallel to this? It doesn't look very natural to me, does it? So let's just sort of twist it around a little. Okay, so after messing about with it for quite some time, I think I've nailed it. So you can see there it sort of steps down and steps down, so it's kind of got like a perspective trick. Kind of, I mean, you're going to not see it with all the plants anyway. No, I'm not going to overplant this one. Lots of sand on show, and the plants will be peaking in the background sort of areas. We want to see lots of the fish, don't we? So we're going to give them places to hide, but also it's going to be quite open and not quite as heavily planted as usual. He says that now. I'm now adding thin sticks to the main scape. This massively changes things straight away. It gives it a really natural look, so it's something I thoroughly recommend if you're trying to create that realistic scape. Now, none of these sticks have been in water before, so I'm going to need to glue them all down, but because they're so light, you only need a tiny little dab. I'm loving how that's looking so far. It's got a really, really natural look to it. Sort of like it's just thrown in. But that is what I want to go for. So that's it now for Hardscape. Now it's time to get on with the planting. So right at the back area here, I'm putting in some Amazon swords. They can get pretty big, but if you keep on top of the trimming, it's absolutely fine. Normally, I place fine leaf stems behind the Hardscape, but this is going to be a little bit different. It's, like I say, I'm going for realism, so I'm just going to stick these in here, see how it looks first. I might change it all, you know? I quite often do stuff like that. Next up is the Liliopsis, was it muriatis? Or something like that? Anyway, looks great. Really good plant for adding detail in small, tight areas. And then finishing up with some Corydoras quad and some sage in the background. It will creep everywhere, but that's fine. It will look great. Right, that is as much plant as I want to do for the time being. Sometimes it's really hard to visualize how it's actually going to look without the water in. I might actually move some of these plants around, I'm not sure yet, but I'm definitely not going to add more because I feel like we've got enough there. We've got enough of the greens, but I want a lot of that sand showing, you see. So normally with like planted tanks or aquascapes, it's like carpets of plants and things like that. That's not really what we're going for with this one. Now once I filled up the tank, I was really confused because there was like a silvery look to the whole wood. I thought it was micro bubbles at first, and I looked closer and thought, no, that's like proper silver. And then I got even closer, got the brush out and gave it a scrub to make sure it wasn't silver. It was micro bubbles, but the most micro bubbles you'd ever see. Look, it just looks like a coating over the top of the wood, but luckily it was just the bubbles. No idea why it did this, but it cleared eventually. It's then time to add some floating plants because the tank is way too bright at the moment and that's not realistic at all, is it? This plant is Salvinia, it grows very fast and it spreads quickly, so I'm gonna need to keep scooping it out every other day. And then in goes the filter. It's just a small little internal one, does the job beautifully, and I've got it in lots of my other tanks as well and it works so well. Very little maintenance required, just like every water change, just take the sponge out and give it a squeeze, that's it, job done. It creates some half decent flow as well on the surface, so you don't tend to get that film either. I'm then adding in leaf litter because it just gives it that instantly real look. It's also really good for the water quality and it will release some tannins into the water as well. Again, this is all good stuff for the fish. I noticed at the back of the tank there's a little bit of a gap and I wanted something a little bit more fine textured. So I'm adding in this Hornwort style plant. Now I might want to remove this at a later date because it grows so fast, so I'm wrapping it up with a little bit of filter floss and then putting a plant weight on the bottom, and it means I can just sit it in there, bury it in the sand, and then later on just pull it up whenever I want to. If I want to, it might look great, but I know it's going to really help as well with the water quality to start with. Right, so it's the next day since that fill up. All the bubbles are sort of gone. We have got a little bit of murkiness going on now. That'll go with some water changes. I want tint, but I don't really want the murkiness. I'm not a fan of that. It just looks like you've got grubby water. I mean, at the best of times, when you've got tannins in the water, everyone thinks it's dirty anyway. The last thing we want is it murky and tanned. Now, I know a lot of you at this stage will be saying you should have a black background. Part of me's thinking that as well, but I want to try something different. Let's go for some white. It looks kind of cool, doesn't it? It's a good look. I don't know if the black will be better, but once you like take all this off, it's going to be a pain in the butt to go back, isn't it? So I'm just going to keep this one as it is. Right, quick flash water change just to get some of that murkiness at the water. The tannins will keep being released from this wood and these leaves anyway, so we will get a nice little bit of tint. I don't want too much though, just, you know, a little hint of it. So I'm really liking that so far. I think it looks good, but I want to add more plants. I knew I'd want to. I want a bit more detail, if I'm honest. If you're on a budget and you only had enough for, say, that amount of plants, you could do that at a relatively or reasonably low cost, couldn't you? It wouldn't cost you a huge amount for that amount of plants there. What have I got? Like, effectively a couple of pots of the Corydoras, the Amazon swords. This is just one piece of a lot of pots actually, and Braziliensis. So it's It's about 4 pots of plants in total, but I want to add some more. Things like in the gaps like there, I think I can add some more of the Liliopsis Brasiliensis there as well. It's not Brasiliensis, that one actually, it's a slight variant, but I've got some Brasiliensis. I just said that so many times to go in some of these gaps just to really make it pop a bit more. And I think that there's a few too many leaves as well. I want a few leaves for obviously for detail, but not that many. Also, there's quite a lot of the Salvinia. It's you know, pretty uniform, and it's all getting stuck in this corner due to the flow. So I've got some water lettuce that I'd like to put at the back there. That'll look really good as well, and it'll hold some shape and take out some of the light, because there's a lot of light in that background area. I then decided that the Echinodoros quadricostatus needed to go at the back a bit more. It was a bit of an eyesore right in that foreground area, and I also removed this piece of wood from the back. It wasn't doing anything for the scape, and I just took it out. It also gives us more room for planting. I then needed to take some of the leaves out, and I added a lot more of the detail stones from earlier on. I just felt it was missing something, and this really did hit the spot. And then in goes the Liliopsis Brasiliensis in all those gap areas, and straight away it looks so good. Right, that has really ramped things up, I think. It's taken it to the next level. I think it looks miles better. So yeah, it's just a couple more pots, to be honest. So it's not increasing the cost dramatically, but it's having a big impact. Now, a lot of aquascapers use the Liliopsis Brasiliensis to give it sort of like a grassy look. It looks filled in and awesome straight away, doesn't it? Look at that. It looks like it's been there for a long time. This doesn't look like it's just gone in, does it? Now, obviously the foreground sand is so clean at the moment, but it will get like bits of detritus and mold and that on it, and that'll look so natural realistic in a couple of weeks time. But one thing I want to do at the moment is fill out this back area here at the moment. It looks a bit odd. I want to just continue to plant down a little bit, some stems. Bacopa is a really good one that we can put there. That'll work well. And I've got some down here in this storage tank actually. This is going to be hard to do without dropping everything. Let me look through the glass. Okay, so this is packed out in this tank, isn't it? Look, so packed out you can barely even see. But yeah, Bacopa, basically that there. I'm going to take some trimmings actually of some of the stems here because they're all pointing upward, and I can plant them in that back area of the tank. There we go. Oh, I'm so glad I made those improvements. I think it looks 10 times better than it did. I tried to keep it with just minimal plants. It just didn't look good. Always add more plants. If you look at a tank that you're designing or building and thinking something doesn't look right, it's usually there's not enough plants. Right, guess what? We can put the fish in straight away. Our filter's already sort of done. It's, you know, it's from the setup previous. It's got the same sponge in it, so we can go straight in. And remember, the temperature of the tank is the same as the bucket because the room is being heated. Right, let's crack on. So the first fish we've got going in is about 8 Otocinclus catfish. I always struggle to say that. These guys are awesome cleaner fish, and in big groups, they actually behave really cool as well. Next up, we've got our orange Venezuelan Corydoras. They look so good, even straight away. And then last but not least, the Apistogramma hung Schloy pair. Now I was a little bit worried to start with because the colours look the worst I've ever seen. Particularly the female, proper drab, nothing going on. Now they were in a dark bucket, so that does kind of explain it, but yeah, a little bit worried. But one thing that I was extremely happy to see was that they were starting to use the cave area instantly. Literally, as I was building this, I was thinking, oh, that's a great little spot. Hopefully they'll go in there and we'll get more babies. Right, so it's day 2 since I first put the fish in, and I'm getting some really interesting action from the cories down here. There's a lot of sort of breeding dances and things going on. Now there's 2 things happening. One, there's ammonia in the water and they're all going nuts, but that's not the case because I've already checked it. There's no ammonia at all. And normally when I see them behaving like this, it's because they're getting like sort of breeding and they like the environment. So, you know what I mean? They do this sort of twizzle in and out of each other, and it's almost like the females go off to sort of scatter eggs and that. So hopefully, if we can get some Venezuelan cories breeding, wow, I mean, I will be insanely happy with that. Like, these are quite expensive cories to buy. They're not cheap ones. They're all obviously imported from South America. And they are beautiful though, aren't they? And they really are colouring up now as well. Like, remember yesterday, only one of them was kind of really orange, but now they're all really orange. It just looks so good. Oh, they're loving the environment. They definitely are. And that's the point of making a sort of scape like this, where you're going for a bit more realism, is that the fish tend to know. They just know. They're just clever. How? How do they know? But look at that behaviour. Really interesting schooling behaviour. I want to do a Corydoras tank, and when I do, I'll get way more of these. In fact, there's probably more space for some more in here, but at the moment, I just want to let the tank settle in first, and then maybe I can add some more to that school. You could probably go with another 3 in there in that group, I reckon. You know, and there'll still be plenty of space for them all. Look at them. They're so interesting to watch, aren't they? Oh, I feel like I should go get more. I will get more, just not right this second. Let's leave the tank for a few weeks, let it settle in, and then obviously all this media that we've got at the base level will actually add as biological filtration as well, which means that you can add more fish. So like I said though, whenever you start a new tank, even though we've got that filter sponge from the previous setup, it's only accustomed to this amount of fish. So if you want to add more fish, then you just need to wait. You don't want to risk it. Don't you? Oh, there's the male. Look, there's the male Apistogramma. Already coloured up again, looking great. Look, that's well nice, really good to see, because yesterday they were looking so drab and I was thinking, oh, what's happened? But straight away coloured right up. And do you know where he come out of? That's right, the cave we set up. Oh, it's so cool when you can make natural sort of style caves and they actually are drawn straight to it. Right guys, it's now day 3. The fish are completely coloured up. The water is absolutely crystal clear, so I'm really happy with how it's looking. It's got that real natural look to it, hasn't it? It's not like neat and tidy like a usual Aquascape. Straight away, the fish are acting really, really cool. And this is what I'm talking about. Look at that, guys. Doesn't that look great? So we've still got really good schooling action from the cories in the back there. Is there 3 there? Yeah, there's 3 there. Where's the 4th? There we go. There's the 4th one, deciding that up here on top of the filter is a good spot just to sit. Maybe there's going to be some egg laying or something. Is that what that is on top? No, that's just where I've peeled a sticker off and there's a little bit there. I was getting excited then. I thought it was laying eggs, but it could well be getting ready. I don't know, maybe. Anyway, but yesterday the male was coloured up, but his fins were a little bit clamped still. But look at them now, look, all opened up. Look at that vibrancy in the reds. It's so vibrant, it's almost pink. And the female's doing great as well. I saw her just a second ago, but literally as I came up to the glass, she sort of scooted off somewhere around the back here. Ah, there's the female. There she is, just poked out there. So you can see, come out in the open. Go on then. There we go. She's not shy, is she? So you can see on her there, look, she's got like that orangeness to the base. There we go, coming right out in the open. Much better. I mean, she will go even better colours than that, if I'm honest, because even earlier on she had a little bit of a yellow tinge to her as well as the orange, but that orange is so bright, isn't it? Looking good. And I reckon that because I've done a new set... Oh, hello. Look at me, stop looking at her. I reckon because we've done the new setup here as well, it might be a case of like some spawning that goes on straight away, because sometimes that seems to happen when you move these cichlids, is that they spawn straight away as like a defense mechanism or like a survival mechanism, I guess. But honestly, straight away I'm seeing some great behaviour in this tank, and I think it's going to be really good for the purposes I've made it for, and that is to just create the environment where we're going to get lots more babies. I mean, we've already got those like 10 or so next door, but there'll be more coming, and I'll be able to catch them easy in this as well. I'll be able to see the numbers and that sort of thing, so yeah, it's going to be really good moving forward. And also the good thing is it's only going to evolve as well over time. As time goes by, it's going to get more and more realistic looking, because at the moment it's all got that sort of new clean look to it. Now that looks great in aquascapes, but not so much in the realistic style stuff. So within a few months, this is going to look kind of grotty, but like really good, I think. Especially when the Liliopsis brasiliensis start sort of creeping and growing into other areas. That's so good.